Welcome to Circle Podcast, brought to you by Circle Sanctuary, one of the oldest nature spirituality churches in the United States, connecting people of nature-centered paths around the world. Join us throughout the week for a variety of shows discussing various topics, celebrating the divine in all of its forms through nature worship, rituals, education, and building bridges of community. Welcome to Urban Unwitches, a podcast to educate, inform, and expand the pagan community. Please join our Discord channel, Urban Unwitches Podcast. Follow us on TikTok at Urban Unwitches, and listen to all our past podcasts on your favorite podcasting platform. You can also join us on YouTube at Urban Unwitches. Now, back to the show. Hey, Kyler!
Well, hello, Rev Dia. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm in a good mood today.
Me too.
My day has gone pretty well. I have a full cup of coffee. I'm good. Do you have your coffee in your big bowl? Mm-hmm.
This is Chris's more dainty coffee mug, I'll have you know. He's feeling very attacked.
It is huge. So I'm excited today. We're actually recording two podcasts today. One about the Woo scale, and the other one is about common sayings and where they come from in the craft. So like, so mo did be, where did that come from? That kind of thing. We're going to talk about that too, but you'll have to listen to another podcast to hear that because it won't be in this one. This one's about the Woo scale, and I love the Woo scale. What's been going on in your world?
It's hot. I mean, it's not like southeast hot, but it's
Right.
hot. Like one thing people do not realize about the loveless state of Washington is the UV here is like off the charts. So as a bald ginger man, I have to be careful, or my middle name will be melanoma. I have to be very careful with it. So, and I work on a car lot, and sometimes I forget my hat because I'm a bald ginger man with the ADHD, and so I sometimes forget my hat. So this is the first time you are seeing Kyler in a week where he does not look like a cherry tomato. I have been as red as your blouse for the last week, and I am finally toned down. Like, we're talking, my nose is as red as like a lifelong drinking problem. Like, it's been awkward this week.
Well, I get to anything else going on that you want to tell us about?
The time of the great exodus approaches. We're starting to actually file for time off and all that fun stuff. I am not looking forward to packing my mother's house because she is a pack rat of the highest order. So I am sure she has TARDISed things in there that have not been seen in the light of day since the fall of the Empire of Atlantis. So, I mean, you know, with its vegan matriarchy. So we're excited. How about you?
I am so sorry. Pardon me. What's going on with me? I can finally make a big announcement. My son got married. Yay!
Yay.
They didn't have a formal wedding. They tried to run off to the courthouse and discovered that you have to have an appointment with a judge if you want to get married at the courthouse. So then I get a phone call that says, "Can we come to your house and you could marry us today?" I said, sure thing, babe, I got you. So they came over and we did a very perfunctory, do you, yes, mm-hmm. Here, let me sign your paper. But they're going to have a real wedding and such later. They want to have it in winter. And I've actually been talking to my daughter-in-law. So my goals in life right now have shifted to be, don't be the mother-in-law from HE double hockey sticks. That's my goal in life. I want to be a good mother-in-law. Like I want to be like friendly and accepting and loving without being creepy. 'Cause I can easily turn into creepy.
Self-awareness is the path to wisdom.
But I am so excited. I really am. The two of them together are just so good. They really complement each other. And he's real outgoing. She's very not, but he's really an introvert at heart. He's like me. He's an extroverted introvert. And so he seems real extroverted when you meet him, but he's not really. He'd rather stay at home, be quiet. And she's a stay at home, be quiet kind of person. And They have a couple of side hustles they're doing. They're raising geckos together to sell, and which is cute. We get cut pictures of geckos all the time. And then they're also doing, she is in computers, and so she's been buying uh, laptops in bulk and then putting them together and fixing them and then selling them. And evidently, you can make
Hmm.
some money doing that. I didn't know that.
You
That's how they
really
support
can.
their
Yeah.
gecko habit, which is evidently very expensive. So
The things you didn't think you were going to get to say today, the gecko habit.
the gecko habit, they have one, and they're about to move into a very big apartment that has a sunroom where the geckos can live. So it's very exciting.
Mm.
So the geckos will
In
live in the
Florida, you in Florida you have Florida rooms. In Atlanta, Georgia, you have gecko rooms.
sunrooms.
This is
Yeah,
great.
gecko rooms. That's what we got.
Gecko
It's a
rooms, yeah.
sunroom. But anyway, they're moving in August, so I'm very excited about that. And there's really, I've just been teaching,
Mhm.
and we had Litha. We've just had Litha. The coven did, and that was a lot of fun. And we at Litha, it's a really odd time because Litha is hot here, really hot, right?
Mhm.
You're talking
Mhm.
June, midsummer, and we burn the ribbon from Beltane at midsummer. And there's a reason for this. This is all practical craft kind of stuff. Because our pole is not wood, right? Normally what people would do is leave the pole up till Yule, cut the pole into firewood, and then burn the pole at Yule during Yule night. That's the tradition. But we don't have a pole you can burn. And so we have to, in order to put the pole away, we have to deconstruct the pole, and we have to take all the ribbon off, which is always a thing. And so we just have started the tradition of burning the ribbon at Litha so that we don't forget. Because trust me, we would forget. If we waited till Yule, it would totally be forgotten. But that means that we have a fire on the hottest day of the year. So it's a thing. So we do ritual really quick because once that fire starts, everybody wants to not be in circle anymore because it's hot and then there's fire. So, but we did that. That was good, and we raised energy for um, basically for resiliency is what we raised energy for this time,
Mhm.
and
Definitely
it was
needed.
good. Yeah, it was good. So there's that, and I'm doing my work with Circle. If you don't know, I host the full moon Circle broadcasts that happen on YouTube Live every full moon, and I've been working on that. And there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that goes into that, and so I've been doing all that stuff, and then I've been crocheting quite a bit lately. I crocheted my first top and I wore it last time. So if you look back, you'll see in a crocheted top. I crocheted that. I was very excited, and I'm in the middle of crocheting a skirt, and trying to decide if I want it to be a mini skirt or a long skirt. And I'm leaning toward the mini skirt, quite frankly. Oh, and I bought a serger. Sorry, I just remembered that. I bought a serger. I'm so excited for $35 from Joann's. Yay! Sorry, I bought a serger. I'm
I was
very
not prepared,
excited.
but I'm ecstatic.
I am so
So
ecstatic. You got one too, right?
I did. I ordered one too. And you actually just reminded me, and I told you about it just a little while ago, so I'm not surprised that I totally forgot. I did actually acquire something else recently. Actually, Chris acquired it for me. For those of you listening, you will not be able to see, but for those who will eventually hopefully see this on YouTube or something, I got a kitchen witch. She's adorable. She looks like
Oh,
little
oh,
Baba
she is
Yaga.
cute.
She's so
She
cute.
does look like Baba Yaga. Oh my
I have
God.
I've literally never seen these before, but Chris went back to Florida to visit for like a week for his mom's birthday, and I got the house to myself. I was really looking forward to it for like 2 to 3 weeks, and then after 2 days, I was like, I want him back. I don't know how to exist in a quiet house by myself anymore. I lost all sense of time because I also took like a week off of work. So that was the thing. Like I did not know what day it was, what time it was. I blinked and 3 days were gone. And I don't think I did like anything constructive during those days, which is completely atypical for me. But then Chris brought me back a kitchen witch and everything was forgiven. So it was nice.
Aw. Well,
Yeah.
that's a cute kitchen witch. I like that. Are you going to hang it in the window or something in the
I
kitchen?
am. One of the things that I have absolutely demanded when we finally buy a house and we're no longer like renting a townhouse or anything, I want a big like bay style like dining room window that I can hang glass art in because I love stained
Yes.
glass. I love
Yep.
designing stained glass. I've even made stained glass. I want to do like a kind of seasonal elemental thing on like the side panels and then leave the center one open. And then I want to hang like something kitschy like a kitchen witch. So yes, I'm gonna hang it in my kitchen now, which sadly does not have a kitchen. I do love spending time in my kitchen, but it's a little like a prison cell right now. So we're actively, patiently waiting to be able to afford a house in the Pacific Northwest. But that is the plan.
I have a stained glass piece that was given to us on the occasion of our wedding from Tony's mentor's wife, who is an artist. So she made this stained glass piece and it has hung in my kitchen window. It's very big. First of all, it's not
Mhm.
small. It is hung prominently in all the houses I've ever had, but right now it hangs over the kitchen window. So it basically is the center of the kitchen focus. And
Mhm.
it's really beautiful. I have never been sorry that we've had that piece. And it's the
It's
only
very
piece
pretty.
that has its own moving box because because it came from Chicago. She mailed it.
Hmm.
So she put it in a box that was, I guess, one where she created the foam around it. So when you put it in, it fits perfectly. And so I was like, don't ever throw that box away because anytime we move, we're going to want the box for this piece of
Hmm.
art. But it's really gorgeous. I'm very fortunate to have that piece, and it was very nice of them to do that. Very nice. And we see them. They live in Florida, and we see them
Hmm.
when they travel from Chicago. Well, they live in Chicago and Florida, so we see them when they travel from Chicago to Florida and Florida to Chicago. We'll see them, and they'll stop in Atlanta, and we'll hang out with them. But he's been Tony's acoustical engineer mentor for since Tony was in Chicago studying at Columbia University. So
I don't know why it never occurred to me that acoustic engineers would need mentors. Like that role in life just never really occurred to me before
it's
now.
a very specialized thing, and it requires the use of very specialized computer equipment. And there aren't many people who, because acoustical engineers go into places of worship typically, and they will listen to the reverberation and they will place all of the equipment properly so that reverberation doesn't cause feedback.
Hmm.
So that is why Tony was tapped to do the first cathedral built in the United States in 50 years. Tony actually designed that system. And then he
Oh,
went
cool.
and commissioned that system. I haven't ever told you about that. The
I
most
don't think
pagan
so.
Catholic mass I've ever been to in my life. Oh
I
my
don't think
God.
so.
It's a Catholic church, and what makes it a cathedral, just so everybody listening understands, a cathedral has a very specific footprint on the earth, and it's oriented in a very specific
Hmm.
direction. It has a holiest of holies in back behind where the priests stand. It has a nave that's very specific, and this has a baptismal pool. It's very specific. The even the dimensions of the church are specific, right?
Hmm.
And so Tony got to go in there and do the acoustical engineering and determine where to put their stuff and everything. So Tony got to also then commission the system. So I happened to be there when they com- I don't want to say commissioned the church. I don't, what would you call that? They went in and all the cardinals were there, and it
Well,
like the
there's the
first
sanctification
mass.
of
Maybe it was the
blessing.
sanctification of the church. It was a big deal. There were chairs up and down the aisles. It was standing room only for this event. And so Tony and I are squeezed back in the this very small audio booth because, and it's really on the floor of the cathedral, and it's they don't, in these cathedrals, there's not an audio booth. There's not a place to put one because of the mathematics, right? You
Mhm.
kind of stick it in the corner of the sanctuary, and then that's where it lives. And that's just how it is, because you don't want to do anything to mess up the dimensional work of the actual cathedral. So I'm sitting there, and the first thing that happens is the entrance of all the important people come, blah blah blah. They go all sit up on the stage. That was, yeah, whatever. And then in comes a woman on point, carrying the biggest bowl. I wanted the bowl so bad. Clearly a precious metal bowl, and it's full of incense. And she happens to be wearing yellow. This is important. And she
Oh, oh.
dances, and as she dances to one particular side of the sanctuary with this incense. And then a few seconds later, in comes a woman wearing red on point with this bowl, and she dances over into another section. And then here comes the person in blue who dances with a big bowl in another section. And then here comes the person in green, and she dances in another section. And then they begin to perform a ballet in time to each other all around their little section, sanctifying this church. And Tony and I are like punching each other in the thigh. I'm like, look at what they're doing. And Tony was like, I know, I can't believe it. I'm like, I'm telling you, that's crazy. And then there was a procession of the Mother Mary as they put her statue in her nave, her little area. She got brought in and put in, and then the statue of Jesus got brought in and put in. And we were like, oh, come on.
Yes. This is screaming that at some point we need to do a podcast on paganism and Christianity. Like
Oh my
this,
God.
we
Oh my
have
God.
to.
Tony and I were flipping out. We were like, what? Say what? We did not feel not at home. That was for sure. We were like, oh, look, they're going to, sanctify the four directions. Oh, look, here comes the goddess. Oh, look, here comes the god. Oh my God. So yeah, I can't believe I've never told you about that.
Yes, this has not been a story that has been shared between the two of us. That is amazing. I love that. So I actually know a little bit about how the cathedrals are set up just from my days in art history class and all that back when I was going to be a starving artist for professionalities. And yeah, I was amazed to find out like the dimension, the flow, like it's set up in a very specific way. And I did not know that Tony was the Catholic whisperer for the cathedrals in the US. I did not know
Well,
that.
he's the acoustical whisperer. He's also done something very similar for the stadium before Mercedes-Benz when
Hmm.
they reconfigured their acoustics. He did that too.
Okay.
So he's just an acoustical person, and that's just, it's very rare. So he's gotten to do lots of things. I've told you
That's
he
cool.
it wasn't Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It was the one that preceded that. But I get a picture one day, and he's standing on the catwalk in the top of this uh, football stadium, and I mean in the ceiling,
Hmm.
and it's a shot down at the uh, field, and it looks like a postage stamp. It's so far away,
Hmm.
and I'm like frantically going, "You're strapped in, right? You're strapped in. Wherever the hell you are, you're strapped in, right?" He wrote back and he went, "Nah, it's fine."
Yeah.
Great,
Love
great.
it. I'm actually getting a little lightheaded. I have a terrible fear of heights. I don't share that often, but like I have this image of Tony standing in the girders in the top of like the Georgia Dome or something, and I'm just like I'm getting a little lightheaded. I'm like, that man is fearless. As far as I'm concerned, he is Stallone.
Yep, yep. He is fearless when it comes to things like that. So we do have that, and then they destroyed it, and then for some reason they hired an acoustical team for Mercedes Benz, which is the new stadium. So it was a different company, so he didn't get to do that, but he did do the 360 wall. So
Hmm.
he does all kinds of things.
Very
My
cool.
my husband is a very interesting man, as a matter of fact, and has very interesting jobs. I think I
Fearless
kind of
with
like
heights
him.
has anxiety attacks over receipts. Yes.
Yes, That sounds right.
Love it.
Okay,
So,
well, speaking of anxiety, we're going to talk about woo theory today. And I think the first thing we need to do is explain what woo is. And I'm going to use this particular story to explain woo because it's the best one I know. Picture, if you will, uh, an outdoor camping pagan gathering. And I take my little butt down to a group that's going to meditate to journey and find our totem animals. Okay. So we go, we sit down, we do a cleansing thing, and then we um, sit in the circle. We start, the person leading the meditation begins, they do it. I am bummed because during this, a rabbit comes out. And I'm like, right. Out of all the cool animals on the planet, I would get a rabbit. Great. It's kind of like the same thing I felt when my Patronus was a mouse. I mean, for some reason, small rodents are my wheelhouse. But anyway, so I got a rabbit. I was like, well, it's not as interesting as what other people are going to get, I'm sure. And so we started going around, and I was quite pleasantly surprised. There was a rabbit, there was a dog, there's a wolf. I can't imagine that we would do that kind of thing and not have a wolf show up. There was a horse, again, not really surprising. There were these animals, right? And then there's some people who knew what their animals were, and so they were like, oh, well, I just reconnected with my animal, blah blah blah. And then there was this guy. It was his turn, and he goes, I did the meditation, and then out in the distance came a great beast with wings and horns. And as it got closer, I realized it was a dragon. And he spoke to me and said, I am the dragon of all dragons, the king of the dragons. And I now make you prince of all dragons. And then he put me on his back and flew me over my kingdom so that I could see what I would rule. And everyone in the circle went, ooh, like, woo. And the teacher, being experienced, went, that was nice, and moved on.
Yeah.
But that is woo. Woo is a term to describe beliefs outside of support or empirical data or mainstream scientific evidence. So woo is basically supernatural phenomenon, right? And woo, though, is especially utilized in that situation when someone goes so far out on a limb of fantasy that everyone in the area are like, woo, okay, woo. And you can actually read a lot about this at www.woowooscale.com. It's still up, I checked. And it has some really great explanations. And one of the things they say is it's a term used to describe practices that have a strong popular opposition, questionable validity, or accusations of being fallacies. For example, Patty went to one of her woo-woo meetings last night, which means Patty went to a UFO channeling meeting. That's woo-woo. And you could spell it lots of ways. I have long ago dropped the second woo, so I talk about it as woo theory. I don't talk about it. Yeah. I don't talk about it as woo-woo theory. I talk it as woo theory. And the author goes on to say that woo is used lovingly, not as an insult, but more fun. I object. I have used woo many times to basically question someone's sanity. Go, woo, that's interesting.
Well, as a true Southerner, though, Dia, that is a scalpel particular to our wheelhouse. Like, I have seen therapeutic language used in exactly the same way. Like, bless your heart. Like, in the South, the worst insult comes in the form of a compliment. So
bless your heart. So there is a quiz that this particular guy has put up, and you can click on the quiz and find out what your woo is out of 100%. I am 79% woo. And interestingly, I wrote this particular information about 4 or 5 years ago. And when I was looking over it for this podcast, I went and took the quiz again, and I was exactly 79%. So my woo has not changed at all over the interim. It is still exactly the same. But one of the things that I thought would be fun to go through is he has a woo scale of 0 to 10. And I thought we would go through the scale and see where Kyler and I landed on his scale. So level 0 is the absolute skeptic, meaning the skeptic and all their agnostic friends, they don't believe in anything beyond the 5 sensory perceptions. These folks are very analytical. They want to see water falling from the sky before they accept there's rain. So I'm not that. How about you, Kyler?
3 days a year. Like, there are some days, there's like 3 days a year, I will wake up and I'm like, oh, bother. And that's it. Like,
That's it.
there's only that. And then I wake up the next day and I have to make new robes because, I have to go dance with the air elementals.
Exactly.
If
So
I was
the
consistent, that's how you know I was not okay.
level 1 is a belief in God. Level 1 is principally personified by anyone who believes in God. So that's the level 1 of woo. And I'm definitely there. I believe in the source. Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Level 2 is ghosts, reincarnation, fortune telling, and ESP. That's pretty low. So undoubtedly believes that the deceased can and do walk the earth. They believe in reincarnation, and they believe in ghosts and the art of fortune telling. And clearly, if you're pagan, you probably have a belief in, say, the majority of these. Number 3 is a belief in angels, spontaneous healing, and miracles. Now, I also believe in angels, right? But I think he really means more the spontaneous happening of miracles. But I've seen miracles happen. I've seen bizarre things. I've been part of strange things happen. Can you share a miracle you've had happen in your life? Like that was truly a miracle? Whether through magic or not? Because I have one. I'm going to expose all my woo today.
I mean, the biggest miracle in my life is I married my husband. Like, legitimately, he's my Cinderella story, but I don't think that that's magical in nature. I just got really lucky. Could be karma. I believe in a form of karma. So it could be. I Yes. I think probably this is probably my biggest woo story like ever. Um, so I went to a workshop in Atlanta where some visiting pagan teachers were, and we did a workshop on drawing down, and I had never drawn down before.
Oh, okay.
And I did not know that at the culmination of this workshop, people were going to be randomly selected from the group. And so I I was only partially in, but I still remember kind of the tail edge of it. I had a felt sense of some of what happened as I was kind of sliding in and out,
Mm-hmm.
and that is hands down my biggest woo. I've had lots of other things happen, but that was the first time I'd stood on something on the edge of something that immense, and
Right.
it was big. Like it destabilized me for several weeks, and I had to do lots of meditation and all that. But it was like, oh my goodness, that was huge.
Well, my spontaneous healing story goes like this. I used to wear contacts a lot. I don't wear them in the same amount for two reasons. One, my eyes are so bad that contacts don't help as much as glasses do anymore. So I just don't like how I look in glasses. So I forego them when I do these podcasts. Typically, I'm wearing glasses, and I wore these contacts not in the recommended way. I would often sleep in them. And so I slept in them, slept. And one day I got up and I couldn't see in this very center of my eye. Like it was like a dark spot had somehow materialized in the center of my eye. And so I went to the ophthalmologist, and the ophthalmologist said, "You have a very serious infection that we usually only see by people who misuse contacts." And I said, "Oh, I definitely do that." And he was like, "Yeah, you can't wear contacts for 6 months, period. Just forget it. And
Hmm.
that's if you don't lose sight in this eye." And I'm like, "Are you serious?" And he was like, "Yes." And he said the other thing we want to worry about is whether or not it goes to the other eye. And I was terrified, and I wasn't working at the time. And I'm going to point this out. I spent the next week, because I saw him later, a week later, and he sent me home with some medication. And he said, hopefully, this will stop deterioration. Stop deterioration. So I sat around and I visualized the hole in my cornea closing. And I did this for hours and hours a day. Anytime that I was not doing something that required my full attention, in the back of my mind, my eye, I'm visualizing this hole in my cornea closing. And a week later, I go to the ophthalmologist and he looks in the eye and he goes, "Oh, I must have picked the wrong eye. Hang on." And then he looked at my other eye and he went, "Wait a minute. There's no hole in your eye. Hang on." And he goes back and he gets his pictures from last time and he shows them to me. Clearly, there was a hole in my cornea. And he takes a picture of the eye today and there's no hole in the cornea. Spontaneous healing. So truly
Woo.
that is woo, right?
Yeah.
Truly that is one of my higher woo stories. But I, as a witch, was like, I am not. This is the cornea to me. And when we talk about axioms of magic, I'm actually going to talk about this
Hmm.
whole story again, because I'm going to talk about magically why it worked, and the reasons why it worked, because they're very specific things. I don't think that this is possible for all ailments, but I do think that there are some things that you can do
Hmm.
um, to speed healing and or to assist healing and create a physical change in your body. But they're just definitely specific magical premises that make that possible. So that's my high woo, but I definitely believe in spontaneous healing consequently. I've never told you that story either, have I?
True. We're learning so many things today. And honestly, now that I've heard your story, I recognize I did not understand the assignment before.
Okay.
So so I do actually have a healing story that I kind of wish would repeat itself. So I'm from Florida, where the water is so hard you don't need to take a multivitamin, multimineral, you just drink the tap water. Like it's so bad, you put water in a glass, set it on the counter, walk away, come back 10 minutes later, there's sediment in the bottom of the
Right.
glass. It's super
Right.
bad. Well, everybody in my family has been cursed with kidney stones, like just about everybody, and they're really bad. My sister's had to have like sonic waves blast them in her kidneys. It's a whole thing, multiple surgeries. I have been very fortunate most of my life to not have them until I turned like 35. And then I had them. I didn't know that's what I was having because I'd never had them before. But I also have a small back condition. I have an issue with my lumbar. And I started passing a rather impressive kidney
Oh.
stone, and it was awful, and it caused from just out of nowhere, I was talking to my roommate and my back seized, like it completely
Mm-hmm.
seized, dropped me to a knee. It was so bad. And then it dropped me to the other knee, and I literally could not get out of a like on all fours position. My back
Mm-hmm.
would not support me, and I thought my back had just gone out. Maybe I'd slipped a disc, something like that. Maybe it was, nerve impingement, something. It went on for 2 weeks. I was bedridden for 2 weeks. I did not have PTO at the time. I was a commission-based massage therapist. It was a really rough time, and I finally got to the point where, so I had a coven at the time, and many of them were very lovely people, and they kept offering to come over and, lay on some hands and give me what
Yep.
support they could. And because I am an obstinate ass. You'll probably
Yep.
have to beat that because I am an obstinate donkey. I kept saying, no, it'll be fine. Well, it finally got to the point, it took 2 weeks, that's how stubborn I am, to wear me down. And they came over and they sat around me on my bed, and I was super uncomfortable because I, as a Southern white man, do not like to be vulnerable. And I was never more vulnerable than that. And over the next 45 minutes, they put their hands on me, and I felt things. I felt warmth. I felt all of it. That night after they left, I passed that stone
Mm,
and I was able to walk the next day. I am not saying the passing of that stone was a miracle because it was awful, but
yep.
I firmly believe that if they had not come over, that would probably not have happened, and I'd have been there until I had to actually go to the ER or something.
Yep.
But
Yep.
that's probably my number one woo healing story.
Spontaneous healing. That's number 3,
Spontaneous.
level 3, spontaneous healing. Level 4. I want to talk about this one. Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, the Bermuda Triangle. Okay, now we're getting into the belief of urban legends, myths, and folklore. Of course, if you believe in them, they're no longer myths and stories, but then you can also be branded at this high level woo woo level 4. Loch Ness Monster, real or not real?
Mm, you put me on the spot. I don't know. I think there's a possibility. I don't
Right.
hardcore say no, but like I live in the Pacific Northwest. We got Bigfoot. Like Bigfoot is huge out here. I
Yep.
don't think I believe in Bigfoot, but I love the idea of Bigfoot and I vacillate.
Well, see, here's what I say. The Loch Ness Monster may not have ever actually existed, but it does now.
Mm,
Why? Because of the laws of magic. And one of the laws of magic says that if you concentrate on a thing for long enough and in the same way, you have created that thing. So do I believe the Loch Ness Monster exists now? Abs-freaking-lutely. Same with Bigfoot. Bigfoot didn't wasn't a thing, but it is now because it's had hundreds of years of folklore around it focusing on this thing that we all agree on what it's supposed to look like, sound like, and be. Ta-da! Now it's a thing. So do I believe in that? Yes. The Bermuda Triangle, though, totally believe in that. But I believe in that because of math.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because if you there's a mathematic correspondence to the Bermuda Triangle that is very interesting and very exact and very in line with other natural occurring mathematics, which is why I believe in the Bermuda Triangle. There's something happening because of the air patterns or something is happening
Hmm.
in that triangle. And I totally believe in that. But it for me that's just not blind faith. I believe in that because I'm a sacred
Hmm.
geometer and I'm a sacred mathematician. And so those things kind of spur me into belief about the Bermuda Triangle. So that's what I have to say about that. So I'm definitely
Yeah.
level 4. Are you level 4 or is this where you stop?
I'm No, so I definitely have some things later on that have a much higher level. Level 4 does have some stumbling blocks for me. I will say that having lived in Florida, I 100% believe in the Bermuda Triangle. Anybody who's lived in the Southeast and experienced the storms that come out of the
Right.
Atlantic where all those air currents converge, does it have to be magical or supernatural? I
No.
hate the term supernatural. If something exists in nature, it's natural, and that's the
Right.
thing. Like the whole world is nature. So I think that a lot of things happen there. There are magnetic instabilities in that area. They have been measured and recorded. I don't know that it's the cloaking device from Atlantis, but I know that there are way too many ships that have gone down in that specific region. So totally believe with you there. So I will say that I am solidly level 4. Also, I have seen some of the bears down at the Eagle, so I know Bigfoot probably does exist. I'll say solid 4.
Solid 4. Okay, so now
Yeah.
we're on to level 5. UFO communication with angels. Now, here's the problem I have about this, and this particularly shows this age. We all know UFOs exist now. They had a whole thing about it in Congress where people who are seemingly sane human beings and scientists came in and said that it was true. So I don't think that we can say UFO is 5. I think we have to take UFO down a few because that is such
Hmm.
common knowledge in today. So I don't agree with this UFO one. However, communication with angels and with UFO people, that I would agree would be a level 5. And
Yes.
yeah, so there's that to me, the belief that you can communicate with angels, and I don't think just say angels, I would say in the way that we communicate with the gods. I think that that's a level
Hmm.
5, right? So that even when I communicate with the Morgan or when you communicate with Jesus Christ or whatever, that communication is what creates level 5 in my opinion. um So the UFO one is kind of it's outdated as far as I'm concerned
Hmm.
now, because we all know that that's true, and it may not be in the way that it maybe it's the way in what that you how you believe these UFOs exist, right? Are they alien technology? Are they trying to communicate with us? That might be part of level 5. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that it's been a while since I've looked at the actual list. I think there are some things I would move around.
Yeah,
Um, Definitely, because like as someone who does believe in the subtle world or the subtle body, the spirit world, the ether, the the different layers of reality, I believe that some of those things should probably shift to lower on the woo scale, because
I
some of
agree.
them that are basic things are kind of
Right.
really high. So
Yeah.
according to like this scale, I would be in some ways a level 9, but I hard
Yep.
stop like 6 or 7. So I'm not all the way to a level 10 even by this scale, and I'm very happy about that. But
No, I
I
agree.
do,
We should probably I maybe I should have taken the time to rework it and I didn't. But because level 6 is Atlantis, and I don't agree with that, because they put
yeah.
Atlantis and crystal healing with crystal healing, crystals with healing properties. There it is. Uh
Hmm.
at level 6 with Atlantis, and I don't agree with that either. Um
I feel I think I have a response to this. I feel like this list was created by someone who is not really in the world of the occult, like he hasn't like explored a
right.
lot of that.
Right.
This feels like an older list from someone looking at it from a fairly Western mindset.
Yep.
Like for example, Atlantis. So we make a lot of Atlantis-based jokes here just because of some of the belief of like classic pagans and all that. I want the world to understand, not that the entire world is going to listen to this podcast. They know where Atlantis is. Atlantis is not a big secret. They identified at least 2 different sites that could have been Atlantis. It was a Greek colony that suffered an environmental catastrophe. It was spoken about by Plato. We kind of know where it was. It's either on the Iberian Peninsula or it's on northern African soil. Either one of these could probably be it. They both fit the markers for it. There were no flying cars. So that's my whole thing about Atlantis. Crystals with healing properties, very much a 60s concept without understanding where it comes from. You can kind of hear like the
Right.
judgment in it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would have put crystals with healing project. I would put 6 down at 3 or 4. I need to rework
Yeah.
this roost
Yeah.
scale. It needs to
Yeah.
be reworked, because 7 is dragons, fairies, and nature spirits, and to me that is way too high.
Oh yeah,
Um,
especially nature spirits. Like I don't know if there are if you were looking at do they physically exist or are these spiritual entities? Um, that's a whole different conversation. But I totally
right.
believe in nature spirits. Like, I mean, you hear the wind talk to you one time, you get over that whole like materialist view of the world real quick.
Right. Right. So I think level 7 with dragons, fairies, and nature spirits is too high. Um, level 8 has the church that I do not name on this podcast because I don't want them to come after me with pitchforks.
Hmm.
And then it has channeling, goblin, ogres, vampires, mummies, ghouls. Um, and I would have put channeling further down on the list as well.
Hmm.
Channeling in a very pagan sense, where you're channeling the gods. That's to me one thing. Channeling, when it comes to channeling UFO entities, to me is something else, right? So I would have split those out. I'm totally going to rework this. It's totally going to happen. And then 9 is abduction and astral projection. And again, I would say abduction is a higher woo than astral projection. There are too many pagans who do astral projection. I have actually
Hmm.
seen, and here's a good story about astral projection. One day, I'm living in this cottage that has a living room, a kitchen, and a bedroom. It's all that's in it. And a bathroom. And there was a hallway that led down past the bathroom to the main bedroom, and I am alone, and I hear noise in this little hallway that I can't see from the living room. And so I picked up a staff that I had, and I went into the hallway, and there was a man with a sword standing in my hallway. I mean, as plain as day. And I went, "Get the hell out of my house." And I smacked it over the head and it disappeared. Then the phone rang and I answered it, and it was Dick Sells. And he said, "Why did you hit me over the head?" And I said, "Why the hell would you astral project in my house without my permission?" And he goes, "Good question. Okay, I'll talk to you later." And he hangs up. I'm like, what? So I have believed in astral projection ever since. But Dick Sells was also a very powerful man, and so it's a little different. But I also would never do what Dick did. I think Dick just liked doing things like that because of his namesake. So me, astral projection is something different. But supernatural powers, having the X-ray vision or the ability to, at charmed powers, if you will, charmed powers. To me, that is a level 9. That is, there's not
completely agree.
There's some smaller powers that I would agree could happen, like psychometry, where you touch something and it's history. That's something else to me. But there are other powers that, like levitation and all of that kind of thing.
Right.
You'd be hard pressed to find somebody who can really do those things, right? Like even the most sister, pious.
Right. My sister, after watching the movie Practical Magic, literally turned blue and hyperventilated, trying to light a candle by blowing on the wick.
Right.
Didn't work. If there was anybody who could have ever achieved it, it would have been my sister out of sheer determination, and it just never happened. So
right. And then level 10 is tinfoil protection, UFO pregnancy, and I added, to me, this is a level 10, stickers on your cell phone to cut radiation. Okay. These are things that if you do just a little bit of research about, there's no scientific proof for it. So the reason you think it exists is solely in your mind, period. It is not supported by science at all. So to me, that's how level 10 gets beyond the ability of even what I would call common personal gnosis, right? People, I'm not the only one who's experienced spontaneous healing. Neither is Kyler. We aren't the only ones who've had a discussion with a divinity. We aren't the only ones who have seen fairies in our ritual circles. We're not, so these are things that in the general common world, we can all point to somebody else and say, yeah, they believe that, or they had that happen. And there's this similarity of belief, and there's a place where that similarity of belief knocks out. And this is where I tell you the story that will end all stories. I don't know that I've ever told Kyler this story, y'all, but it's a great story.
I'm buckled in.
Okay, so I'm at a psychic fair, and I go to this psychic fair, and those of you who know me know that I only do psychic readings in support of some other thing. So I was at a psychic fair raising money for, I don't even remember what, probably the battered women's shelter. And, but I wanted to go to the psychic fair because all my friends were there. And so I went and I read, and we had a good time. And there was a really cool psychic fair, very small though. And after the fair was over, it was a 1-day event, and they all decided we would go eat at Denny's. And I don't know why I remember this, but I remember it because Denny's is one of the few places where you can have a table of like 40 people because the way that their restaurants are usually laid out. And so we were all laid out, and we happened to be sitting across this lovely couple. And I emphasize this, they were the nicest human beings, and they were wearing tie-dye. And I mean, from the ribbons in her hair to the soles of her tie-dyed tennis shoes, there was tie-dye. And so I was like, that's interesting. And I said, hey, is the tie-dye like a fashion choice, or is there some spiritual meaning for you behind the tie-dye? And they said, oh, it's to raise our vibrational level. And I said, oh, okay, that makes sense. What do you do with that raised vibrational level? We work for the Palladians. Oh, how do you work for the Palladians? Well, I am the director over the Southwest United States for the Palladians. And so I oversee their actions and workings in the Southwest United States. I said, okay. And then I turned to the woman and I said, what do you do? And he goes, oh, I'm his secretary. And I said, okay, so where do you do this work? On the UFO, on the mothership. Okay. Well, then where are your bodies? And they go, very wise question. They're in the dry cleaners. And I said, okay, you work in a dry cleaner, your bodies stay in the dry cleaner, and while you're in the dry cleaner, you beam up to your desk in the mothership of the Palladians, and he's the director for the southeastern United States, and you're his secretary while you're at work. Your bodies are at work. Yes, that's right. That is woo, people. That is really, really high woo. And maybe has a scientific explanation. Just saying.
So, point of procedure, Miss Chairperson. When this goes live onto the YouTube, can we sometimes blur my face? Because sometimes it says things that my mouth doesn't, and I don't want to be offensive.
And I will reiterate, one of the things that these couple did was they did a lot of energy healing, and evidently were very, very good at it. So I take
Mhm.
nothing from them as human beings. I'm sure I know them to be perfectly nice human beings, but that is a little
Mhm.
much. I mean,
So
that's a
much.
little much. And it's a lot of woo to tell a group of strangers you've never met before.
Yeah, yeah,
That
that's a lot
that's the
early.
It's really early. I mean, I had just sat down and we had exchanged names, and then they were telling me this. That is a
Yeah.
lot. And that leads us right to the woo scale, which is something that I
Mhm.
have created. That's exactly where we have been led to. The woo scale is something I created years ago to try to explain how to handle woo in your life, because there's woo, and you need to do that. Um, that is Let me wrap up this woo scale that we're talking about right here. The woo, the 1 0 through 10. Most Wiccan and pagans and other spiritual practitioners have more than 50% woo outcome on the woo quiz. Um, and some can have as high as 100%. So one of the things you have to do is, when do you know you've crossed the border into needing medication and intensive therapy? And how do you raise relatively grounded children who will still have wonder and mystery and magic in life? And that's where the woo scale can help. Okay. The woo scale says that the higher your woo is, the higher the level of your woo, the longer a period in time it should be before you tell anyone. So technically, I've broken my woo thing because I've just told a whole bunch of people that I believe I healed
Mhm.
my eye, right? So I have broken
Yep.
this totally, because that's to me, a really high level. It's not the highest level woo story I have in my life, but it is pretty high. And I have broken that, right? And I created the woo scale. And one of the things the woo scale does, and I'm going to share my screen here, I have this all set up. Um, is it shows, hang on, let me move that. There we go. It shows this graph, right? And 10 is the high, how high your woo is. 0 is in the middle. And then this is the woo level. And over here, it's unique and unusual. So very unique, very unusual is how I said it. So there's 0 is the balance, and there's kind of another, just where crazy and unique and unusual things happen, is below that 0. And then 10 is the highest level of woo. And then this is something all of the time, is you would tell anybody you just meet that I'm psychometric. I tell people that all the time, right? To me, that's a low woo thing that I easily tell people. Um, So A represents, if we look on my scale, A right here, which is in the middle to the right of the zero, represents a low woo happening that you choose to share quickly after meeting someone. I am pagan, Wiccan, I'm psychometric. All of those are in the A area. And then B represents high woo that happens and should take years to assimilate and much better understand, um, for a much better understanding, and definitely before you share. So B is way over here, BX up here is that where the B is in the upper right corner. C represents moderate woo that happens to you frequently, a feeling in the pit of your stomach that leads to going a different way to work or being visited by an animal helper. That's C. So here's something you might share a lot that's higher on the woo scale, right? And something that happens more frequently. And D represents a person's whose high woo level of things happening all the time. If this is the case, then possibly mental evaluation should be taken. So D is over here, and I'm going to give an example of this. I have a very good friend. I love him dearly. He has schizoid affective disorder, and regularly calls me and says things like, "Did we go to an interdimensional place last night where you healed me?" He has schizoid affective disorder. The reason he thinks that is because he's in D, right? These things are happening all the time. They're definitely a problem. And he knows that there's something wrong with his take on things because he's smart enough to know to ask if it really happened. He understands that he's ill. And then E represents a frequent magical things happening, but it's not unusual. Getting shocked and determining that was karmic retribution, a candle that flickers when energy is applied, being able to move small things like a pendulum. These are frequent things that are not necessarily high woo. They have an explanation that can be scientific and or air current and or many other things. G represents normal and not very unique or usual things that happen often in people's lives. Flickering lights because you figure out that the light bulb is going dead. Again, it's unique, but not unusual and not something you wouldn't mind telling other people. And 8 represents unique or unusual things happening frequently in someone's life and could be considered normal. So this is things that maybe this one-off thing that happened to you one time in your life. And so then that causes there to be a lot of change in you. It's a radical departure. Some people who have near-death experiences, I would put an H, right? It's a very unique thing, but lots of other people have had it very similarly. That's what the deal is with that. And any place where there's a double X on my scale, there is safety. If you get over here in F and D, you're not safe. You should be considering mental help or mental assistance because of that. So that's the woo scale. If you want to see this and contemplate on it, it'll be in our Discord, Urban Unwitches podcast. You can go check that out. I will upload it there, and we can have further discussions about my woo scale if you would like. But I do have some ways to handle woo in your life. What do you think about the woo scale, Tony? Kyler, sorry.
Ooh. Your Freudian negligee you're showing, darling.
Sorry.
So I call other people Chris at least 7 times a day. It happens, I think, when you look at their face every day, all day. So I think I love the woo scale. When you first mentioned this to me many a year ago, more than we probably either one of us want to consider, I loved it because one of the hardest things in the world for me is sharing spiritual experiences. And it's something that when you teach the open public, you get a lot of woo stories. And
Right.
a lot of times, and I'm not saying this to make anybody feel bad, it's a thing that happens. Like when an author writes a book, that book tells you a great deal about the author. When you
Right.
tell a story, that story is telling people about you. And that's one of the reasons why you should pay attention to things like the woo scale and give yourself time to build credibility with those people so they know who you
Right.
are. If you're throwing these profound, sometimes very grandiose, epic stories at people very early on, that could actually stop them from believing your credibility in a whole host of other things. And I mean, the stories that I have heard over time, it beggars credibility. And the higher your woo, like for me, one of the things that I have recently had to deal with from my family in the Southeast is like a lot of the conspiracy theories that come about online.
Right.
That is part of the woo scale too. I had an aunt who took I think it was the Johnson and Johnson vaccine, and the next time I saw her, I was at her house. It was a summer day, which does bear on the story. And she walked in and she turned around and she says, "Ha, you're going to have to explain this to me, liberal." And because that's how she talks. She's on the she's always been on the far end of the woo scale. She turns around and she takes a quarter and sticks it to her forearm and it sticks there. And she believed she fully believed. Now, this is a woman who, if her husband would have let her had access to the ivermectin, she probably would not be around to give us the woo, but because she would have seriously overdosed on the ivermectin and her organs would have shut down. But she sticks this quarter to her forearm and she says, "Look at that. I'm magnetic. Y'all talked me into taking the damn shot, and now I'm magnetic." Sorry, you'll have to beat that too.
Yep.
And I looked at her, and because I am myself, and at the time I had not the impulse control that I have now. I looked at her, I said, "Listen here, Walmart Magneto, the reason why you are sticking quarters to yourself is because you just went outside and mowed your lawn in summer in Florida and you are sticky. It is not because of a vaccine. If you had passed sixth grade science, you would understand that." And the twang got much, much worse before this conversation was over. But yeah, but since then, I've loved the term Walmart Magneto.
I love Walmart Magneto.
Yes, she was a special auntie. We don't talk as much anymore since I'm on the West Coast. I've apparently graduated up the West Coast pyramid scheme in her mind, but that I actually put a lot of that on the woo scale near number 10 too, because it beggars any kind of rational belief.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. It
so
really
I love
does.
the woo scale. I think it's really applicable, especially in the days of the internet when you have so much information thrown at you, and some of it
Yep.
is just bonkers.
Well, and that leads to the next points that I have, which is how to handle your woo. And one of the first things I say is that it's sacredly sacred. The higher the woo event, the more scared you should be to share the sacred. So sacredly scared is what I meant
Hmm.
to say. Sacredly scared. So what I mean by that is I have some of the woo I have, especially from childhood, is really high woo, like off the charts woo. I have can count on one hand the number of people I have mentioned it to. One hand. And no, I'm not going to tell you about it because it's really high woo. And I know that because it's sacred to me. I believe that this happened.
Hmm.
It's sacred to me. It had very impactful things in my life. And if I were to ever share it, it would probably be on a book where everybody would make fun of me later for it. And I wouldn't care. But it's very sacred to me. And it was life altering to me at the time that it happened. And it's still important and point in my life. So you should be a little scared the higher your woo is, and the higher the woo is, it should be more sacred to you. You're definitely not gonna be the Walmart Magneto for sure. You're not gonna be walking around with quarters stuck to you, claiming that you are magnetic. Um, the second point to to about woo is that you validate woo. Woo does not validate you. So woo either has actions that validate it. That is, some other third party, like my optometrist, validated the woo that happened to me, right? I
Hmm.
So there's that. But also I validate that woo. I have the story. I said that it happened. Okay. Well, all of that to say that that I probably wouldn't share the eye story if the ophthalmologist hadn't verified it happened. But of course, if he didn't, then it wouldn't have happened. Do you see what I'm saying? Like one thing
Mm-hmm.
precludes the other. And so when you share your woo experiences, ultimately, the change the woo brings in your life is a testament to the power of woo. So some of the woo that's happened to me has changed, altered how I look at my life, is part
Mm-hmm.
of the reason I'm pagan, is part of the reason I believe in the things I believe. And that is, if I share it, it is in consort of pointing back to that as something. I use the eye thing a lot to talk about magic and how you make magic and how you harness the power of
Mm-hmm.
magic and how you harness that. So I'm not just telling that as a brag, right? That's not a flex.
Right.
I actually use this as a story to illustrate principles of magic that we're going to talk about sometime soon on the axioms of
Mm-hmm.
magic and the laws of magic. So that's one of the things that I wanted to point out about this. So um, the woo, the higher the significant validation of woo, um, I'm sorry, woo is of great significance, is also often validated by universal truths that it exposes. So, for example, my friend who has schizoid disorder, a lot of his woo involves him being a god or being more than he is, right? It's not validating some universal truth of love. It's not validating some universal truth that helps mankind. It is a truth that edifies and sets himself apart from other people. It makes himself special. And that is your ego, people. That is not
Mm-hmm.
woo. That is your ego. And when you start having woo that says, well, I'm very special because I can do blah, 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 the more eyes in the sentence of your woo, the more likely the woo isn't real. The more likely that
Mm-hmm.
woo is actually your ego. Um, the amount of woo that can happen on a small scale and regular basis is pretty high for pagans, right? But you need to always question that. It should be tempered by a skeptical mind. And so, one of my uh, examples of this is we were in a, a ritual with Richard, with Dick Sells, and we had this candle burning, and it burned like that. Like we lit it, and shoo, that candle was
Mm-hmm.
going out. And we were like, hey, wow, look at that. And he goes, so do you think that was magic? Is that the energy we're creating? And I said, yes. And he goes, go over there and put your hand exactly where that candle is. So I went over and stuck my hand on top of the candle, and there was a vent of air conditioning blowing right on it. So, no, it was not our energy, it was air. Air was making that
Mm-hmm.
candle disappear very quickly. It was literally burning that candle up. So that's one of the ways that you can utilize a skeptical mind. Um, your totem is bunnies, or should you put up a better fence around your vegetable garden, right? Like, you could say yes, bunnies, but I wish they'd stop eating my vegetables. Why don't you put up a fence, and then you wouldn't see as many bunnies? And maybe they're
Mm-hmm.
not your totem animal. Maybe they're just a pest in your garden. One of my favorite sayings from one of my teachers was, sometimes a snake is a snake, meaning
Yep.
snakes exist in this world and they have nothing to do with us. And sometimes you come across one and it has no meaning for you. And my best example of this is I was walking, doing a hike, and I looked, as I started to put my foot down, it's a black racer is across the thing. And so I jumped off one foot over the thing and turned around just in time to see it slither off. I did not think that was a spiritual thing. I thought it was a black racer crossing my path as I was on a hike. That's what it was. It
Yep.
wasn't some spiritual thing. It was just a black racer, and that's all. Um, so that's some of the things you want to use, a little bit of skepticism, you know,
Right.
applied to your woo. You need to be skeptical.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything to say about that?
I do. So this is kind of in relation to one of my number one woo stories, which I've actually shared on this podcast before. It was actually around the time of our first meeting. So in my life, so for the last 25 years, I have kind of worked to live a life of service. So I've been in multiple seminary programs. I've got a couple of different ordinations. When I met my good friend Rev Dia, we had a conversation the first few nights, or after the first day or two. It was after one of the big rituals at this gathering that we were at. And she shared with me that I had not been paying attention to some otherworldly information that was supposed to be coming to me. And that night I found what most pagans will call their patron, the entity, the spirit, the deity that you kind of work with. And my relationship with patrons is long and complicated just because I don't think the way most people in today's world engage with them is really kind of historically how they were. But over time, I have worked with this energy. And who I am now is profoundly changed because of that one evening. It's one of many, many reasons why I love Dia so much, because she helped me to understand this aspect of myself. The question becomes this: in working with this deity who specializes in catalysis, in catalyzing change, and going through communications courses and counseling courses and being specifically trained in pastoral counseling and grief counseling and all of these things, is it because I work with a deity that specializes in catalysis? His demean, his bailiwick is change. Does that give me the ability to be the person people come to and feel comfortable with when they are going through difficult periods in their life or they want advice about big change? Or is it the fact that because this is an element of my personality, I have developed it? Both can be true at the same time.
Right.
It can be a gift of my God. It can also
Right.
be a talent that I possess that was a gift of my God that I have developed into a high level skill. And that is being grounded both in the spiritual and the mundane, the physical. The gods are there, the spirits are there, they are there to help us. If you sit back and you pray in front of your altar, but you never do anything
Mm-hmm.
to make that happen,
Mm-hmm.
you're expecting ethereal forces to do all the heavy lifting.
Right.
And that's where grandiose woo stories come into play, because they
Right.
bolster that whole experience when they're not really needed. And so yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. This is the what I call epic language. So I've had students come to me in the past where they're like, this thing happened, and it is right out of a Robert Jordan fantasy novel. It's right out of Wheel of Time or Terry Goodkin or Shannara, whatever. Um, it is that same language. If you're using the imagery and the language of a fantasy writer, chances are that may not be low on the woo scale. We'll put it that way. So yeah, that
Yep.
is what I have to say about that. I definitely agree with it.
Well, one of the things that I want to talk about real quick, because we're coming to the end of our time, but I didn't want to not cover this, is how do you know a few simple rules for understanding when you need a psychiatrist and when you don't? Um, and so the first one is if the voices or visions suggest you hurt yourself or others. So if you have
Yep.
voices or visions that say to harm others or yourself, or off others and yourself, you need to go see a psychiatrist forthwith. It is imperative. Second, do the voices and visions suggest that you are the most special of special people who ever walked the earth and promise you power you cannot manifest, or suggest that you're set above most people? This is probably ego, not woo. Not necessarily need a psychiatrist, but therapy wouldn't hurt.
Hmm.
Can you verify woo? Unverified personal gnosis we've talked about before on this podcast, but we also talked today about how people have near death experiences all the time. That's a verifiable thing as far as the rest of the world is concerned. That's a group personal gnosis, if you will. The
Hmm.
group has all agreed that these near death experiences could happen. Okay, then how you interpret that is going to be more important than the fact that that happened, right? So you want to be sure that you're interpreting in a way that's changing your life and positive and not negative. Woo can't go against the known and unknown laws of physical science, physics, quantum mechanics, and the laws of magic. This is why I don't mind sharing my I story, because it goes along with the laws of magic. It adheres to the laws of magic. It's one of the ways that I know that it's real, because it's not just something I made up. We were talking about the Bermuda Triangle, which clearly has natural occurrences involved in it. So it's not that big of a deal. And psychic abilities must be verifiable to be true. One of the things you can do is write down predictions, seal it in an envelope, and give it to a trusted friend to find out if your psychic ability is actually true, right? Um, and also, if you meet someone and you say, "You're going through a great change," and they say, "No, I'm not," well, your psychic ability has not been verified.
Right.
Like, unless you're willing to get into an argument with somebody over whether or not they're going through great change, you know, it has to be verifiable to be true, right? That's what
Mhm.
is true. And also, psychic ability is not a game you play or a skill you flaunt for reasons. And one of the reasons I give is if you really are a good psychiatrist, a good psychic, you're going to find that the government might have an interest in you. I'm not kidding. I'm actually very serious about that. People might want to exorcise demons out of you if you're really good at a good psychic. People will think you're just crazy. And then there'll be people who
Mhm.
are scared of you. I was reading at a group of elders when I was much younger. And one of the elders, they said, "Hey, why don't you come get a reading from her?" And she said, "Are you guys crazy? She's the real deal. She's learning everything there is to know about you people. You're stupid." I was like, great. Now I've made myself an unknown enemy because now they're afraid of me because they think that the real psychic deal.
Mhm.
So just be experienced. Just know those things, right? Again, this is why you keep it safe and keep it sacred if you have high woo. And woo experiences must have a significance in the person's life when it happens later or when you reflect upon it happening later. Woo doesn't happen in a vacuum. Woo doesn't just happen. There's always a reason for woo to happen, and you need to understand that. And when dealing with animals, woo needs to present itself in unusual or unique ways. And I'll give an example of that. One day I was leaving work in uh, show home, and I went out to where my car is parked on the street. And as I stepped between two cars, I came face to face with a fox that if I had put my hand out, I could have petted. It was that close to me. I hadn't seen it when I started, but suddenly it was there. And we stood there and looked at each other for shocked for a minute, and then it ran off. Later, the idea of fox in my life became very significant, and it had to do with a lot that was happening in my life at that moment because I studied what fox meant, and I understood that it was a portend, if you will, not just it happening in a vacuum. But again, that required me to go study, what does fox mean? What does fox energy mean? What does it mean to the native peoples? What does it mean to first peoples? What does it mean to me? What does it mean to Europeans? Blah, blah, blah. You have to study and really learn things so that you can understand whether or not woo is okay. Um, so I have some other things to say about woo. We may do a second one where I talk about parenting and woo, which is a whole thing, and
Oh yeah.
limitations of woo and maybe training for woo. But we're out of time for today. We have run out of our woo time. I'm sorry. We do Resiliency Corner, and I would suggest that what you start doing is questioning the signs and symbols in your life. If you see a sign or a symbol, do some research about that sign and symbol and see what that's like for yourself. And then uh, see how that goes for you and see if that doesn't point to some woo in your life that's important that you might have been missing. And that's my resiliency corner for the day. What about you, Kyler?
Um, so I think for this one, pick one thing. Pick one thing in your life that you have taken for granted. Maybe something that you were taught by your teacher, something that was passed down from your parents. Uh, Extra points to Gryffindor if it's something that you have argued with people about in the past. And approach that topic from the other side. Question it. Question it completely. And before you do this exercise, look up the list of logical fallacies online. Learn
Mm,
what assumptive bias is if you don't already know. Learn how arguments are structured and learn how arguments are altered to give false logic. Logic is, I think, entirely a human construct, but it is a useful tool to question our own influence over things. When you can apply both and still come out with the same answer, you can be reasonably sure that you are kind of proceeding without the filter of woo over your eyes. You're proceeding forward with something you can trust. And that's just because we influence our perceptions. The truths we cling to, the biases, the assumptions we cling to, they affect us. So look up a list of the logical fallacies, read through them, and then question an assumption that you have made or someone has given you, maybe at an early point in your life. And then once you do that, you may be surprised at the chain that comes from that. So that's my resiliency corner. I don't know if it's all about resiliency, but it's certainly a thing I like to do on a daily basis.
All right. I always end by saying, have a magical day. Kyler, what are you ending with today?
Bright blessings. And so mote it be.
So mote it be. Thank you for listening to Urban Unwitches. Please reach co-host Kyler Petrie and Rev Dia at urbanunwitches@gmail.com. That's urbanunwitches@gmail.com to suggest topics for shows or comment on past episodes. Please join our Discord channel, Urban Unwitches Podcast. Follow us on TikTok at Urban Unwitches. Follow us on YouTube at Urban Unwitches to watch all episodes. And listen to all our past podcasts on your favorite podcasting platform. Rev Dia is a witch for hire as an officiant, life coach, astrologer, geomancer, and medium, and can be reached at www.revdia.net. See you next time. Thank you for joining us on the Circle Podcast, presented by Circle Sanctuary, and produced for all who follow nature-centered paths. Join us throughout the week for various programming connecting with the community around the world. Please don't forget to watch for updates on the Circle Sanctuary website at www.circlesanctuary.org. Follow us on Facebook at Facebook/Circle Podcasts. We can also be found on your favorite podcast hosting sites, such as iTunes, Spotify, and others. Until next time, many blessings.